Our next question here, keeping on discussion of Omega, Raj Geary with Wrestling Inc. wants to know what your thoughts are on Okada versus Omega's match at Dominion last week.
I guess time will probably tell as far as how I feel as a fan about them. And I'm talking about the whole series. I don't think people, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s or whatever, were looking at that Steamboat Flair, Chi-Town, Music City, that run they had. I don't think they were looking at it as the way we look at it today. And when we look at it today, we see how important it was. The thing I enjoy the most about the matches they have, obviously they have a deep connection between the two of them, a chemistry that exists between the two of them. But the thing I like is the matches are all very different. That's special, you know, when you can do that. And I think just from my standpoint, I think those matches are the best at what those guys are able to do. But every wrestler is able to do something different. There's this great, you know, I don't know how many comic fans we got on the line here, but there's a great moment in one of the Batman Superman arcs where Catwoman tells, you know, Batman that, hey, Superman's the best at what he does. And Batman says, yeah, he is the best at what he does, but that's not what I do, basically. He says, you know, he's the best at what he does, but not at what I do. And that's very much how wrestling is everybody provides a different thing, different elements, and they've absolutely showcased the best at what they can do. I think, especially in the bell-to-bell sense. But I don't look at it in any way like, oh, I've got to have a match with him like that. No, it's a different set of circumstances every time you're out there. And I think, you know, as we go 5-10 years from now, we'll see just how special the series of matches they've had are and how important they were. Anytime you can make somebody, you know, maybe mute their WWE network and pop on New Japan World or pop on AXS TV, anytime you can make somebody look the other way, that's like the beauty of wrestling in 2018. Doesn't mean you don't love wrestling. Doesn't mean the competition is mean spirit. It means it's just competition, and they turn heads with their outings every time they go out there.
Fantastic. Next question here, a little bit more AXS TV centric. Mike Johnson wants to know, what can we expect from the Bullet Club is Fine marathon on AXS TV?
I think we had a lot of fun. You know, the marathon heading into the G1 Special, July 7th on AXS TV. We're going to cover, with the Bullet Club is Fine marathon, we're going to cover everything that's led to this moment, to this match between myself and IWGP Heavyweight Champion Kenny Omega, and that means just an outstanding amount of wrestling. So if you're a fan of what we do already, you're getting the hits, you're getting the highlights, and if you're brand new to New Japan Pro Wrestling, if this is your jumping on point, you couldn't have picked a better point, because we're going to cover the best stuff, and nothing is better than the Bullet Club. There's a couple of, you know, loonies out there that try to propose LIJ or Chaos or any of that, but if you've ever even stepped foot outside your house and you look to your left and you look to your right, chances are one of those directions you saw a Bullet Club shirt. So this is it's a celebration of everything that led to this matchup, and it is my opportunity to, you know, very much showcase, here are the facts, here's the evidence that the Bullet Club is indeed fine.
Great, and for everyone's reference, the Bullet Club is Fine marathon airs on Saturday, July 7th, starting at noon Eastern, leading up to the live G1 Special in San Francisco show. All right, next question here. We got two questions from Justin Barrasso, Sports Illustrated. First is, how important is Brandi Rhodes to the success of Cody? And two, is it important for you to be the Ring of Honor champion when you fight Omega on July 7th?
Well, Brandi is first in my life, so I'll answer answer regarding her first. Marriage is such a beautiful thing. You fall in love and you get married and you think each other are beautiful and you want to be around each other and you make each other laugh and all this early stages thing. And then, we're heading towards our, 5-year anniversary. I look at how important Brandi's become to the business in my life as well. Brandi didn't choose pro wrestling like I chose pro wrestling. It's in my family, but I made that decision to commit my life to it, to make it my life's work. Yet she, her outside and objective viewing point from it is really eye-opening. It's really refreshing. I'll give you an example. In a few weeks, actually after the G1 Special, I'm unable to go to the Sears Center to do the first walkthrough for All In, and it's eating me alive. It's not even an important walkthrough. It's just a real basic walkthrough, but you can bet Brandi Rhodes will be there in my stead, and we won't miss a beat. And she's just the most important thing to me in the world. My dad and my mom had a really, wonderful marriage. He took her everywhere. He took her to Japan when he wrestled Inoki. She drove him and Andre around when they were the special attractions and territory time. I try to model my marriage after their marriage, and it's not hard because I love Brandi so much. As far as the Ring of Honor World title heading into the G1 Special, I have these 3 title matches. I have the Ring of Honor one at Best in the World, Baltimore, June 29th, the day before my birthday. July 7th on AXS TV, what we're talking about today. I have the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, and then at All In, the show I'm executive producing, I have the NWA World Championship title match. So the world is not enough for somebody like me. The character you see on the screen is there's not much difference. I think I might disappoint some people. I'm kind of a dick in real life, and I don't want to go 0-3. I don't want to go 1-3. I don't want to go 2 for 3. I want to go 3 for 3. I want to take this completely, and it would mean a great deal to show up Daly City, Cow Palace on AXS TV as Ring of Honor champion, and I think it also would be really good for Ring of Honor. The Dalton Castle experiment didn't pay off, and this is my opportunity to get back to where I was, because as their champion, and even not as their champion, I've continued to grow their business, and they're very grateful for it, and I'm very grateful for them. It's an opportunity for me. But yeah, I'd very much like to show up and be able to hold my title up alongside his and see where it gets us. Now, I did that last year with Okada. I did not win. So, even more impetus to get it done this time.
Speaking of San Francisco, Mike Johnson with PW Insider says that the first Omega versus Cody match drew Ring of Honor's biggest crowd to date, and now you're responsible for selling 10,000 tickets for All In minutes. What are your expectations for the live crowd in San Francisco, and where, in your mind, are the goals set for that crowd that night? Yeah, so the question was your expectations for the live crowd in San Francisco, and what, in your mind, are the goals for that night?
When you're in the main event, in the thick of it, competing, you want that to be your focus. I have a bad habit of trying to make everything my focus, trying to make the production my focus, I'm trying to wear all these hats that I'm not even qualified to wear. But that's how I was taught. That's something actually Vince McMahon told me once. He said, we're all producers, we're all cameramen, we're all sound guys, we're all wrestlers. Talking about when you put your segments together, put your moments together, whatever it may be. But I think for this one, I really want to focus on the match. I want to focus what I'm able to do bell to bell. And I think the people will come. Right now, they've got a great advanced ticket sales, contrary to anything else you read out there. And I'm thinking, that will pick up and pick up. I really want a Joe Namath it. and say, hey, there's going to be 10,000 people in the Cow Palace, and I might do that. But I think we'll get close, and I think that's huge for the Cow Palace. That building, that building needs that love, that spirit of wrestling back in it. I mean, this is the same building Eddie Guerrero won the title in. You know, there's so much history in this building. But I think I'm trying to shift my focus. I'm not able to do it all. I'm not in charge of nothing as far as New Japan Pro Wrestling goes. AXS TV is going to put on an absolutely stellar production. New Japan Pro Wrestling is going to put on a stellar production. And they just need to hit my music. And I'll be able to do what I can do as far as bell to bell goes. But, yeah, I got so much on my plate with All In already that I've even been told. Because I ask every day, every single day, 2 to 3 people get a message from me because I need a second opinion on it always. Is how many tickets have we sold? Because it's my job, you know, even though I just said it wasn't. It's just how I'm wired.
All right. Next question here comes from Rich Cretch with voicesofwrestling.com, and he wants to know if you can describe or detail the evolution and growth New Japan has had in the United States from when you first came aboard.
Well, I mean, I first came aboard, you know, 2 Wrestle Kingdoms back, so I'm not the expert on strong style, and I'm not the expert on New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'll fully admit that, but I think everything in wrestling takes time. Especially wrestling is still almost like word of mouth, if that makes any sense. Something great can happen. Because I remember sitting in the locker room when I was still in WWE, and we watched, I think we just watched Nakamura's entrance, the one with the gold crown and all that. And it's amazing that how much that reverberated back to the United States. So I think when you turn heads, we were talking about that earlier, when you can do something that makes people turn heads or turn away from what they know and what they trust already, that's special. That's something that New Japan has been able to do. Mark Cuban having the foresight to get New Japan Pro Wrestling on AXS TV is what makes him Mark Cuban and us everybody else. But I think another thing I really enjoy is they have in Japan, New Japan is number one. It isn't WWE is number one in Japan, and New Japan is the local show. No, New Japan is number one with an absolute rich history. A history that I, learned about growing up. My dad would bring me the real skinny, long Coke cans from Japan, or I'd see the pictures of him, or I'd, try on his oversized Ribera jacket from his trips over there with Inoki and all the various times he went there. The time he went with Dustin, one of the times they got to tag together. So I really appreciate that they're ready for expansion. They're ready. When you go to those shows over there, Osaka Joe Hall, it's sold out. Wrestle Kingdom, 40-something thousand tickets. Kurikan Hall, nights and, back-to-back is packed. And it's just the feeling that they're ready for the expansion. They're not doing more than they should be doing. And they've loaded it up. They have a guy like Okada who's just I would never tell him this because I think he's like a young kid. I don't know. But he's a model for what a wrestler and a man should be as far as how he carries himself in the locker room, what he puts himself through, and how he continues to do it, and do it for the company that he waves their banner, and that being New Japan Pro Wrestling. But then you've surrounded him. You just brought Rey Mysterio in the fold. Chris Jericho, still thinks it's the 1970s or 80s where you come over and you curse and hit fans and go nuts, and he's like become Stan Hansen somehow, even though he's Chris Jericho. But I love it, and the fans love it. So you have Jericho, you have me, you have Rey Mysterio, you have Jim Ross, you have guys that are linked to a product the more casual fans might know. So it just makes it a little easier to plug in. You don't want to be intimidated by plugging in to a new product, and New Japan doesn't intimidate you. They have something for everybody on their show, too. You can talk about strong style all you want and hitting each other as hard as you can in the face, or the amount of times I've been bleeding, from my eyes out there. But then there's also, so much fun that they have on the show as well. It's an absolutely stellar product. I'm always somebody who sits and watches every minute of every show when we're in the locker room. I really like it.
All right. Speaking of crossover, Brian Fritz from Sporting News wants to know if you can see a time where we see more cross-promotion between bigger companies and possible between the biggest companies here in the U.S.
That's tough to say because wrestling is definitely changing. I mean, it's already changed. It's not just changing; it's already changed. And you can't hide anymore, and exclusivity is starting to seem less and less important. But I think the most important thing, as cliche as it may sound, is fans and their continued support and their continued interest in what we do. And if it's in the best interest of the fans, then I could see perhaps, I know Triple H wanted to make that, he wanted to bridge between NXT and New Japan, around the time he used, the legendary, Jushin Liger when Liger wrestled Tyler Breeze. And I know that was a first step, but I think more steps need to be made. And I think it's silly when they're not. I'm glad, we're back to this New Day Elite thing. I'm glad it happened. So I'm sure there was some idiot, some just moron in Stamford on that fourth floor who was thinking, oh, no, these are, they're going to make our guys look bad, blah, blah, blah. And no, they're going to make the fans, it's for the fans. And you have to go with that, and always. And I could see, because, like I said, wrestling's changed, I could see more happening. There's kind of a thing that's popular on Twitter. People say wrestling in 2018, and they'll put an image up that you wouldn't expect to see. I see that all the time. I think you'll continue to see that as we go forward, in terms of perhaps, crossing the streams a little bit, and our people might double down, and it might become more competitive. I don't consider this an era of competition as much as I consider it an era of choice. Give the choice. Competition, look at where it got us. We ran WCW out of business. We destroyed an entire region of the U.S. in terms of their love for wrestling, and WWE has had to rebuild it. I'm from Georgia. I felt the fallout of a company losing in a competition before. So I don't think it's about competition anymore. I think it's about choice. And to answer the question in this incredibly long-winded fashion I did, but I hope you'd see more efforts to be made to cross those bridges.
The next question here comes from Brent Brookhouse with Cage Side Seats and SB Nation. Where do you think New Japan Pro Wrestling should focus efforts to continue growth in the U.S. beyond the occasional live event?
If it was me running New Japan Pro Wrestling, which it's not, I think you would want to hit, instead of just one, you came and you do the special here heading to San Francisco. I can already tell you, not just because I'm in the main event, but I can already tell you the special is going to be gangbusters. It's going to be outstanding. But the next time you come over, if you're New Japan Pro Wrestling, you should make a tour of it. And when I mean a tour, I mean, let's hit Los Angeles. Let's hit New York. Let's grow a pair, which they have. And I know that's not really a, politically correct expression anymore, but make a run of all the A markets and see how you do. And that might be the first step into seeing what you can do consistently in the United States, because it's going to cost a lot of money to have your production come over, even if it's limited production, even if, that's why it's so great to have a partner like AXS TV. That's a win-win. You have something here in the States. You're not having to do it all yourself. I think next time, make a tour of it. They won't, but it would be really cool if they did. It may take some time, but yeah, I think if you hit all the A markets, I think you're going to probably sell out or come near to it everywhere you go. And I think it's also real important that you give them New Japan Pro Wrestling. Do not dress it up with something that they might be comfortable with, or, oh, I know this guy, you know, and you don't have to decorate it with American stars. What's got them to where they are is the Japanese talent and the Japanese stars. Now, is it great? I love a good, you know, the rivalry that exists between United States wrestlers and Japanese wrestlers, but that's what you have to give them. And that's just the key, I think, to expanding, is make sure you give them New Japan Pro Wrestling. Don't do enough market research that you change your product, if that makes any sense.
All right. The next question comes from Jose Youngs with Fansided, and this is more about wrestling style. He says, as a lifelong student of professional wrestling, do you find it challenging to jump back and forth between Japanese and American audiences? For example, the lariat/rainmaker is considered one of the most devastating moves in Japanese wrestling, while the pile driver is treated the same in America. However, they're essentially treated opposite when in different markets.
I get asked this question a lot about how do you adjust. I don't, and maybe that's a criticism on me that I don't. Maybe I should, but I've not seen the difference yet. Good wrestling is good wrestling. Great wrestling is great wrestling. There's always a difference every single night, no matter if you're 5 minutes down the street from where you were. And, you know, particularly to your examples, the rainmaker and the pile driver, as far as their importance, it has less to do with the physical maneuver and more to do with the individual doing it, and their commitment to it, and they're just, it's in between the moves that matter, not the moves themselves. And I haven't noticed the difference. I keep, you know, I say that, and then there's all these clips of me busted open and Bushi just jumping, you know, full-blown coup de grace double time on me through those Japanese tables, which if there is one thing that they need to get uniform, is they need to get uniform tables, because, gosh, those Japanese tables are just death. Yeah, but I haven't noticed a difference. For me, as a student of the game, the biggest difference I've noticed is I am in some towns an absolute hero of the people, and in other towns I'm the lowest of the low. I'm the worst thing they've ever seen. And that is the biggest challenge for me. And I honestly think it's very new in the business. I'm not talking about a split reaction in the house. I'm talking about a drastic change in the town from being loved and being hated. And that's my favorite thing right now, is to learn. How do I do it? And that's why I don't use any of these dumbass terms like heel or babyface. Not real. You're a wrestler or you're a star. You want to be a star. But yeah, that's my, you know, personal difference, I suppose.
Great. We've got a two-part question here from Darren Paltrowitz, and he wants to know, number one, when you first left the WWE, you had put out a to-do list, which you quickly accomplished. Is there still more you are looking to accomplish? And then two, is there something you wish people knew more about you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I got through the list the best I could. Roderick Strong, he avoided me. Not really. I just don't think the timing was there on that. So that one's still not scratched off the list. I still have the list, so that name is legit not checked off. I think the next thing that naturally came for me that I wanted to do was, when, you know, push came to shove, I was told I couldn't put butts in seats, and I said, no, I think I can, and I want to put my own money into it to show you that I can. And I have two of the best partners in the world, you know, Matt and Nick Jackson, the kings of DIY, and just, I've learned so much from them. And you know, All In became, if there was a second list, it would just be one box with All In next to it, and that one doesn't get checked off until we hit an absolute grand slam. Because I'm gonna puke if one more person tells me how important All In is for wrestling and this and that. It's not important for wrestling unless we hit an absolute grand slam, and that's the goal. And so that would be, important for me, or that'd be the next to do. As far as something that people don't know about me, I don't know. That's such a good question. I think it's pretty, I don't know. I'll have to think about that. And my life has all been on the record. My family is public. Everything's out there. I don't know if we have any secrets. I'm looking at my dog right now. I don't think we have any. No, Farrah, we got any secrets? No, man. No secrets about me.
All right. Next question comes from Sean Radican. He wants to know if you can talk about the creative freedom you have to build your character. He says that you're in a very unique situation where you have the ability to really develop your own storylines for ROH and New Japan on being the elite. So what's it like also having that type of relationship with the Young Bucks to craft the show and build your popularity at the same time?
Well, it's funny, on every flight we go on, the big overseas trip, I think Matt Jackson watches that Steven Spielberg HBO documentary every time, and I know why he watches it, because he feels a connection in terms of being a rebel as far as creativity goes. There is no reason why a YouTube show like Being the Elite should be driving as many narratives as it is if you look at traditional pro wrestling. But like we said, wrestling has totally changed. Being the Elite, everything we do on that show, people connect to. We know right away. We say it once on the show, and the next Ring of Honor show we show up at, there's a sign. I think the first time we did the FTR bit, the next day there was a fan dressed as a coffee cup with it written on there. So it's really special, Being the Elite. But Being the Elite is Matt and Nick's. Don't let anyone else take credit for that. That's Matt and Nick's, and Nick has become a master editor, and they're learning as they go. But for me, in terms of, I don't even look at it as a creative anymore, or creative control. I was given a set of skills, and then I trained to have a set of skills, and I spent, 12 years working in WWE. I was one of the last guys who was able to wrestle a guy like Undertaker on a full European tour, to share a pay-per-view with Shawn Michaels, to be in the ring with these guys. If I didn't learn, I was never going to learn. I learned from those guys, and that's what brings me to what I do today. I don't look at it as being in control of my creative. I literally look at it as just knowing myself. I guess knowing my act, knowing what I would do and what I wouldn't do, and going out there and trying it out. The fans will tell you if you got it right or got it wrong. But I think that's one of the most backwards-ass things about wrestling in the first place is writers. What are you writing? What on earth are you writing? I have some friends who are writers at WWE, and the most thing they could ever offer was, as far as pre-tapes and backstage interviews, they were there to provide a little direction, a little coaching. They were there to look at the shot, and that in that vein they were very valuable. So I see the importance there. But as far as this industry, when people say, "Oh, if anyone ever tells you it's scripted," I dare you to find me a wrestling script. It doesn't exist. We're a rare thing, a rare bird in the world of entertainment, an important bird. Same with producers. I love all those legends. I love them to death. Some of them are like family to me. But how the hell are you going to tell me what to do out there? You don't. And that was my biggest mistake with WWE, is ever listening. There's a difference between collaboration and advice and being told to do this, because that's not how it works. You go out there and you're the one on TV. You take the heat if you suck, and you reap the rewards if it's a grand slam. And with Matt and Nick and myself and with the crew we have, I'm sure there's plenty of people who don't like us in the industry because we're very unruly. We don't take direction. We do what we want, but we do what we want in the interest of the fans. So if you put yourself in their shoes, if you put yourself in those seats, you'll always get booked again. If that makes any sense.
All right. Next question here comes from Raj Giri with WrestlingInc.com. He wants to know, what would winning the IWGP Heavyweight Championship mean for you and your career?
Did you see Infinity War, you see when Thanos got all the Infinity Stones, he snapped his finger, you saw what happened, right? I think for wrestling, for the remaining members of the internet wrestling community, I could do the snap. I could have finally do the snap. Because that's my biggest, plenty of people have critiques about me. That's my biggest critique about the internet wrestling community is you all seem, I don't know why I'm saying you all, but everybody seems to know exactly how to do this, when to do it, and exactly what it is. Wrestling cannot be defined, literally cannot be defined. You can have an idea of what works, what doesn't, and you can definitely look in retcon and say that was this special, and I think it was special because of this. But for me, when I'm criticized for anything, and I look at this IWGP Championship opportunity I have, I mean, that's the snap. That's legit the Thanos snap. That's saying the industry is absolutely just unpredictable, is on fire, and will continue to surprise you. So it would mean a lot. And like I've already said, I don't intend on going 0 for 3, 1 for 3, 2 for 3. I want to go 3 for 3. And I already have defeated Kenny Omega in just clean, understandable, right in the middle fashion. So this should be no different.
All right. Next question here comes from Jason Powell, and he wants to know, he says, you're not in the NJPW G1 Climax tournament this year. Do you have any interest in working it this year or perhaps in future years?
I would have wanted to be in the tournament this year. I got there's another part of my life that's not wrestling, and that's I've been working to break into acting a little further. I had my a couple guest roles in past seasons, and there's something I was able to accrue or book. It hasn't been announced yet, and that's eating up my schedule. I actually don't have a day off until the Wednesday before All In. After, I think I start July 1st and then go all the way to the Wednesday before All In, no days off at all. And as I say that, I'm looking at my wife, who has an absolute frown on her face, so she knows what it means. But that was the reason I wasn't able to be in the G1. I think, you know what, I'll just guarantee you. I'll just Joe Namath it. I will absolutely 100% be in the G1. If not next year, the year after that. I will not, I give you my word, I'll be in the G1. If I have to move heaven and earth to do it, I will compete in one. I've seen the importance of it, and I've got to watch the finals last year. I watched them from the curtain. That's where I want to be, in a position like that.
Speaking of your busy schedule, as a follow-up question from Jason Powell, he says there's some talk of an All-In 2 happening later in 2018. Do you have any comments on that?
If I said anything, I'd have to sue myself because of the amount of NDAs I signed for my own damn show. Okay. Let's just focus on All In 1 and or All In itself, and let's see. I know that I can guarantee. I mean, I can confirm we've been approached about an All In 2, because if you really look at, if you break down and strip away what the first one is, that was a big check to write, and it did come from 3 people, and we split it. But we did, having to buy insurance for a building, having to, form a budget and all that. It was, my goal in life is not to be a wrestling promoter. I don't think it's my goal, unless I'm pretty good at it, which I don't know. Maybe we will be. But we'll get through all in Chicago and see. Again, the rule of thumb with me, no matter how much I'm a jerk at sometimes, is if the fans like it, then it's my job to give it to the fans, as long as I call myself a pro wrestler.
All right. Another question here from Brian Fritz. He says, you mentioned there are things that you want to get better at. What areas do you think you could improve most?
I mean, they're real nuancy. In ring, I have really great wind, and I just think I need to access it more. I need to activate it more. There's this part of the match, I don't want to get too specific here, because it peels the curtain back too far. But there's this part of the match near the home, the home stretch, I guess you could call it. And I just need to get my head up, and I think of my dad all the time because he always, close your damn mouth when you're selling. I think about him all the time, and get out of the bucket, all these things. There's just, unless you're in the industry, it's kind of hard to explain, but near that tail end to create this kind of epic, it's just like writing a book, you reach the climax, and then you flow into the conclusion, and I think that's where I really need to improve. I know what I'm really good at. I'm also aware of what I'm not. I'm also not very athletic. I'm the least athletic of the three in the family. Dustin was just an absolute stud. Dusty was could have ended up playing professional baseball if he wanted to. He was an absolute athlete, no matter how he looked. And me, I was the kid on the amateur wrestling team who, until I started practicing 3 times a day, did not have success. So that's something that when you're in this industry and you see Ricochet doing 7,000 flips off the top rope, you have to figure out, okay, what can I do here? Or how can I, in a situation like if I'm wrestling him, how can I, compete? Ospreay, how can I compete? And, being bigger too, I'm actually all of a sudden one of the bigger guys in the industry as far as physically, which is great, but I don't know how that happened. And being bigger, how, what I'm able to offer there. So there's all kinds of in-ring stuff. It's a very vague answer, but specifically near the end of the match and building that home stretch.
All right, next question here comes from Justin Brasso, and he says, there were so many New Japan stars in the crowd this past WrestleMania in New Orleans, which is unlikely to happen in San Francisco. Is there a difference in the locker room philosophy in New Japan compared to WWE, or the talent's more similar than we think?
There's a huge difference in the locker room philosophy between WWE and New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I can tell you, and it's not a knock on WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling understands much more how to do their locker room. The individual factions are separated. Chaos has their own locker room. Bullet Club has their own locker room. There are no outsiders, no celebrities. That they can be somewhere else, but they can't be in the locker room. It's a real traditional space. You ride on a bus with your crew and not the other crew. You don't stay at the same hotel. It's a real traditional space, and it's something, just as an old school wrestling fan, I really value when I go. But I think they have a locker room. I think that's the philosophy in the locker room is, as far as company goes, is much different. But as far as competitors go, you're going to see so many similar faces in locker rooms anyways. You see a lot I was just in a locker room staring at Rey Mysterio wondering how the hell he got there. And it wasn't too long ago I was in a WWE locker room. I've found that people who love wrestling tend to continue to find each other.
All right, we've got time just for 2 more questions here. The first one comes from Mike Marr with Lords of Pain, all the way from the UK. He says, similarly to here in the UK, we're now seeing shows in the US like the New Japan Specials and All In running in bigger venues. Do you think these shows are a good measuring stick for the current state/popularity of wrestling?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they are. They're, whether they came from a position of, hey, you can't do this, oh, yes, we can, or not, they're still a great indicator of what's happening. And they're still a great indicator of interest. Interest. I've gotten some heat because I often tell people my least favorite era in wrestling is the Attitude Era. And to kind of amend my statement, maybe one of the reasons it's my least favorite era is because we got to stop talking about it. It happened. Business was outstanding. Steve Austin was printing shirts and printing money at the same time. It happened. But now there are these guys who, like myself, busting our ass. And I feel it. when you're out there, you can feel it. If the crowd is into it, if they're happy, if they're excited, if they're enjoying their night, and that's the indicator as far as we can do more. That's how All In came about. Is a 4-show tour with Ring of Honor. We're only 1,100, 1,200 people each night in these small venues. Where I said we could absolutely pool 10,000 fans together because that's how many we're able to touch. With being the Elite and with AXS TV and New Japan Pro Wrestling and with Ring of Honor and the Honor Club. So I think it's an indicator of where we're at. And I think this year and next year is going to be super important as far as looking at where we're going. A big mistake anybody could make is, we're going to keep bigger buildings. When in reality, that's what New Japan does better than anybody. Measured, disciplined, took their time, and have a trusted product that when it comes to the United States, like with AXS TV at the G1 Special, it's going to deliver.
All right, our last question here is a fun one. Fred Ricciani wants to know, as a Zelda fan, would you like to represent New Japan/Ring of Honor at E3 next year?
Oh, that's a great question. Did you hear, by the way, my Pomeranian just chewing me out or something? So your question was, as a Zelda fan, would I like to represent New Japan at E3?
Or Ring of Honor, yes.
Oh, I've never. You try to seem cool. I've never felt less left out than watching the YouTube stream of the Elite play the New Day. I've never felt less left out. So I might have already penciled in E3 because I have a different genre. I'm not a fighting game guy. I'm not even into the multiplayer, online play world. I'm into the narrative-driven stories that still exist. And you have Zelda. Hideo Kojima's walking around E3, so I can talk to him about all the Metal Gears and all the things we could do. And if he could ever put me in that movie, of course. So go ahead and pencil me in for E3. I'm there.
Fantastic. And thank you so much, Cody, here for taking the time to talk to everybody. We really appreciate you, and we're looking forward to seeing your match here at the G1 Special in San Francisco on AXS TV. Everybody, just before we go, if you haven't seen, the press release went out this morning. AXS TV will be broadcasting WOW, Women of Wrestling, from Jeannie Buss and MGM Television. So check your inboxes. That press release should have come out to you, and we're really excited to get that going, recording the events here in LA later this year and broadcasting in early 2019.